Welcome to Relationships and Astrology, and this is our series on compatibility, and today we're going to talk about Jupiter, and I'm Margaret Gray in Dublin.
And I'm Armand Diaz in New York. So, Margaret, we're moving away from the personal planets. We've been through most of them, not the sun yet, but we've been through most of them. And Jupiter, is that a relationship planet?
You know, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because here we're in the social planets, so we are a little bit of a step removed. And I think it's a very interesting one because it's really underestimated, and yet I think it's incredibly important in relationships because there's the association with joy. And often, you know, when clients come to us, maybe they're having some difficulties, but also clients do come to us when they've just met somebody special. And so they do have that feeling of joy. And I think Jupiter is so important to look at because he kind of can carry us through relationships, even when there are times which are a little challenging.
Indeed, I think that there's an optimism that comes with Jupiter, a kind of, with relationships, you're looking to take a leap of faith when Jupiter is in there, you know, if it's a natal aspect, then, you know, hey, you know, you have opportunities. But by transit, you know, Venus is hit by Jupiter and you think, well, you know, this could work. You know, there's a little bit of faith that, you know, whether or not it pans out to a great reality, you have to test the waters at some point.
I agree. It kind of opens a door. And I think with Jupiter, opportunities come our way. And we can either go through the door or not, but at least there's the possibility of doing so. So I think it's a very expansive energy. And I think that's great because in relationships, sometimes often there are misunderstandings or things can get a little blocked. And then a Jupiter transit can come along and widen it.
Open up new possibilities, kind of inject a little bit of things are not so bad. You see a new door open. It can be the kind of thing like, you know, you're kind of like grousing at each other all week long, and then Jupiter is kind of like, well, it's Friday, and, you know, it'd be fun to go out. You want to, you know, like that type of thing that makes you feel a little bit better about stuff. It doesn't necessarily, I don't think Jupiter does much to really solve deeper problems. I don't think it really does a lot to, you know, address the problem. Sometimes it helps you skate over the problems. But sometimes that's not the worst thing.
Well, it's playful, isn't it? And I think there needs to be a playful energy. And I think when Jupiter isn't there, when there isn't a strong Jupiter connection in the charts, then sometimes people don't know how to play together and everything is so serious. And then the whole joy goes out of a relationship and people forget that initial attraction phase, the honeymoon phase, is all about playing together and getting to know each other and enjoying each other's company. Plus also, what do you think about the aspect of Jupiter that is about meaning and kind of a connection with one's belief system, spirituality, and so on?
I think that that's increasingly important. I think that the personal dynamic of Jupiter to Venus or to the sun or something like that has always been important. I think that the dynamic of Jupiter as what I believe in, what's meaningful to me, what my big picture is increasingly something that we want to share with our partners. It's first of all, it's no longer given that, you know, any two people that happen to be together are going to have the same worldview, you know, politically, socially, spiritually. And I think that Jupiter says, you know, hey, you know, do these things at least match up? Are they compatible? Am I learning something from you?
I agree with you. I think if that's not there, then it can be a fundamental problem that can come up throughout the relationship, and that sometimes is underestimated, that people think, oh, we're attracted to each other, we love each other, we care about each other, and they forget that actually not having a common sense of meaning in life can really then later on create cracks in the relationship or even just not help fix things. Whereas if there is that in common, then it can really, really help. The other thing I wanted to say about Jupiter that's also interesting is that, of course, in mythology, Zeus was married to Hera. And so I think what can come up in relationships also, if somebody is strongly Jupiterian, if one of the people is, that can be projected onto the partner, the Hera factor of feeling restricted and constricted. So I think it's something to look out for when one person has a lot of Jupiter, is very, you know, a lot of Sagittarius.
Or Jupiter to Saturn. Jupiter aspects to Saturn are something that I've seen quite a bit of that I think are quite significant. And, the person that has the Jupiter is liable to feel, ooh, wow, this is a little constricting. And the person that has the Saturn usually feels, I don't know if I want to open up about this. It's an opportunity to open up, and it's an opportunity for the Saturn person to grow. But often it seems a little bit, like that Jupiter, let's take a leap of faith. Saturn is often saying, no, I don't think so,
Yes, it kind of shakes it up a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, Saturn says, I'll put my toe in the water and see how I feel. Jupiter says, jump in, what's the worst? It's a little cold, it'll wake you up. And
Take a chance.
And it is a great growth, because these are two social planets, and it's a great growth aspect. And yet I think that it really, provides a lot of tension. And it has to be, I think that is one of the aspects that has to be managed most carefully.
I think you're right. I think that's one of the things to mention, that certainly when you're looking at two charts with the synastry, that when Jupiter aspects the planets of the other person, it enlarges the energy. And so it depends on how, say, person A, say we call them Mary and Tom, if Tom's Jupiter lands on Mary's moon, if Mary isn't very comfortable with her moon, all the time, once she's around Tom, that energy of her lunar energy is constantly being expanded and enlarged. So it very much depends on the comfort level of the person whose planet is aspected by the other person's Jupiter.
So, it's interesting that we're talking about Jupiter, which everybody would, well, not everybody, but many people would think, well, this is a beneficial, helpful, great planet. It's the cosmic Santa Claus, or whatever we say about it. And we're talking about it as being, potentially a little bit of a rough spot in relationships. And I think that is certainly the case. I think that it can, I also think that a little too much Jupiter in one person's chart can make them, or I wouldn't say it makes them, it can lead people to sometimes feel that there always are more alternatives out there. And sometimes that works against the glue that you need for a relationship.
That's a very good point. It's the issue of commitment, that sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to commit maybe to one relationship or over a period of time when there's a lot of Jupiter in one chart, because the need for freedom is so extensive that the kind of concept of relationship as we have nowadays may feel a little too constricting. And if the other partner, on the other hand, is more Saturnian, and wants more commitment, again, there may be a clash, which has nothing to do with two people not loving each other, but maybe to do with their needs.
Really, really important point that you're bringing up. And I think that is like one of the key things that whenever we talk about relationship astrology and all the dynamics that go on, like it needs to be emphasized. It's not really about love. It's not really about that sense of connection. It's not really about that, like coming from the heart. It's about the relationship. It's about how we affect each other. It's about how we push each other's buttons and how we, support each other. But like on a different level, it's not that core level.
And also it's about, and that so much depends really, I should say, on where each person is at. Because, if people meet, it's also about the timing. If people meet and they're on the same page, then things can really click into place. If people meet and even though the potential might be there in the charts, but just the timing in terms of where they're at in their lives and how their level of consciousness and awareness, then really it doesn't matter how compatible the charts are, it's just unlikely to work.
And yes, and Jupiter perhaps shows, I wouldn't say it does the whole, I wouldn't say it really explains, but Jupiter does show where, as individuals, we're looking to grow and expand. And sometimes that can take us away from a relationship because, the need to grow and expand is real. And as we do it as individuals, sometimes without actually even directly affecting the relationship, I think that sometimes we sort of start growing in different directions.
Yes, or at different speeds even, and I think there's a certain distance, a certain gap that is manageable if the other person wants to catch up, or, if that's right for them. And then there's a point at which sometimes one person almost shoots so far forward that it's really difficult for the other person to catch up, or they may not want to, or they start going diverging in different paths, and that makes it quite challenging.
And finally, well, I don't know if it's finally, but I would also add in that there is a sort of dogmatic side to Jupiter sometimes. Jupiter, it's about searching and it's about exploring, but sometimes you feel that you found the thing. And I think depending upon sign and depending upon consciousness, there can be with Jupiter a sense of I know what's what. My beliefs are reality. And sometimes that can get a little dogmatic, and that can be a problem in relationships when we know what is good and true and beautiful for everyone always.
Yes, very much so. Flexibility, I guess, is a key word, isn't it? It's like so important. Flexibility, tolerance, all those good things that we all try our best to do.
And that is something that is a little bit tricky sometimes. But Jupiter is generally speaking, we regard it as being this big helpful planet. And I think that it graces relationships by transit, by natal aspect. It does have this sort of graciousness, this sort of helpfulness, this sort of optimism that is, generally speaking, pretty helpful.
Gives us a sense of hope, doesn't it? A hope that things might be better, and that's very important. Kind of keeps us going on a day-to-day basis, and a sense of possibilities. And we all need a sense of possibilities of what could be, what might be. So yes, so in that way, it's really helpful.
It colors in a little bit the cold gray lines of Saturn, which we'll talk about next time.
Absolutely. So next time we're on to Saturn and boundaries. So we'll see you all again. Thanks, Armand. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Margaret.